Hi my friend, in this video we're going to be making modern house synths and vocals inspired by Wh0's song Needin U. And we're going to find out if we can do this in under an hour using the 80-20 rule of house music production. What you're listening to right now is the song that we'll be working on. And what you're looking at right now is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on. This group over here, this melodic group, is what we'll be focusing on. We'll be going in order of how I actually built things out so you can follow along when you're creating synths and vocals for your own tunes. And make sure you stick around to the end of the video. We'll be doing a full 80-20 rule recap so you can apply what you're learning in this video to your actual songs. All in all, it only took about an hour, maybe an hour and a half for me to get these vocals and synth sounding the way that I want them in this. And this whole tune here, mixed, mastered, arranged, and ready to go, only took about 6 hours for me to complete. So if you want help finishing songs faster, just like this, I've made you a free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish one song like this every single week. Visit the link that's on screen now or in the description to grab the ultimate song finishing toolkit for free. And if you want to take things to the next level, you can also find a link to this video's project files in the description as well. But with that said, let's jump into this. Alright. So when it comes to the melodic elements like the synths, vocals, samples, all that kind of stuff for this tune, the main driver is going to be the piano that we're going to be building out and the vocal. So one of the first things that I'd recommend when doing any of this is making sure that you have the reference track that you want to be building your song against in your DAW and setting it up so that it's turned off, and when you press like a key on the keyboard, for example when I press S, it solos that track so we can switch back and forth. And this way, what we can do is make sure we're selecting the right like samples and sounds, and one of the biggest things we'll get into in a moment is the volumes. So with that said, let's go in order of how I built things out. The first thing is when I was listening to it, I could hear that vocal, and so that's what I wanted to kind of start building up first. So this is the first element that I added. We'll take a look and a listen to this. What I was going for was that kind of that little U kind of thing. This one's a little pitched up, a little way to make it sound a little bit different from the original. Just found something on Splice and chopped it up and then kind of put it into the similar positions there. In terms of the processing going on, I threw this shaper box plugin and found this wide decay. I don't really know too much what it's doing. Let me turn it off for a second. Just kind of more center. Kind of like warbling it around, panning it, kind of making it sound more interesting, I would say, in terms of like kind of some stereo movement imaging going on. Now what I'm running into is the standard channel strip. The first thing is removing a bunch of the lows so it's not competing with like the kick or the drum or anything like that. And in this instance, I did bring up a bunch of the highs. Felt like it needed that compared to the reference. Probably doesn't. Probably bring it down just a little bit. And then what I'm running into is some sidechains. So I set it up like this, so it's a one knob sidechain using Ableton Shaper, just going to quarter notes, which is what the kick's usually doing, just ducking down the volume. This way, it's just a one knob sidechain that we don't have to play around with compressors or anything like that and routing. You can just bring it into taste, and there you go. So what this is doing is leaving room for the kick in any instance where it is overlapping with the kick, and then kind of adding that cool pumping sound that's pretty characteristic in dance music. Then we're bringing up some of this Ableton saturation, which is just the Ableton saturator device. I've just again mapped to this knob. Don't have to play around with like the UI or anything like that. And what this is doing is just filling out the sound a little bit, adding a little bit of grit with the saturation. And I think that's pretty, whoops. Whoops. And then the other thing there is, I'm using some sends and returns. So right here is where my mouse is a little bit of reverb, a short delay, and a long delay. So I'll quickly show you what that looks like. I'm using the Valhalla vintage verb here, and I brought down the decay, so I believe that it's pumping on quarter notes or maybe half notes. The idea is to use like a calculator, like a delay time calculator, so that you can have this in time with your music. Makes it so you can dial in a bit more reverb without it being as like muddy and messy and interfering. This is a look at the short reverb using its eighth notes with a little bit of the movement here, pushing it off the grid, and then lastly running it into this longer delay, which is at quarter notes and a little bit of movement pushing it up and then down off the grid a little bit. So just dialing that in a bit to taste to kind of give that cool, spacey sound, fills it out quite a bit more too. And then the idea is by using the same sense of returns, all these elements are going to be going through the same reverb and delay, which is going to kind of help it make it feel like it's all in the same space. That's it. Let's move on to the next element. And then flicking back to the reference, just trying to pay attention just to the vocal like little chop bits. Main thing is really the volumes is what you want to pay attention to there, because really everything else is just very slight touches when it comes to the processing. So let's have a look at this lower U here. Running into this effect track with this like pan man effect. So again, just trying to make this move around the panorama a little bit, the stereo field, so it's sounding more interesting, and it's kind of a fun way to make things just basically sound more interesting. And we're removing much of the lows, shoving out a little bit of the highs, a little bit of the one knob sidechain, a little bit of saturation to fill out the sound a bit. Then I was running into a K clip just to bring up the volume a little bit, and then a little bit of this one knob width plugin. What this is Polyverse Wider, which is a free plugin, which is really awesome. It's really good at like making things sound wider. But the main thing is I just mapped some of the main knobs to this Ableton rack, so it's just a lot easier to use, and I don't have to open up the plugin each time, just right there ready to go. And so what this is doing is helping push this sound a bit more to the left and the right, making it a bit more stereo and leaving space in the middle for the other elements. And then I dialed in a little bit of reverb and delay as well with the returns. Then the next element that I added in was this louder bit here. Let me play it from over here too. This one right here. There's almost more like the full vocal that's playing, a little bit more, before it gets into the chops. Similar processing, used K-clip just to bring up some volume on this one. A little bit of effect track, probably doing some panning, or I don't know, just I guess. Okay, so there's a bunch of cool things going on here. It's adding a little bit of the crystallizer effect, which is one of my favorite things. It adds that like kind of crystally granular kind of echoes. And then I just found this like interesting preset. Just wanted to kind of make it sound a little bit more different and interesting, I guess. And then Space Echo is off. It's more of an arrangement trick, so I'll get to that in the arrangement portion. And then running into just like standard channel strip stuff, so we're removing some of the lows, a little bit of sidechain so it's pumping, making room for the kick, and then a little bit of wider to push things to left and right, and then a little bit of reverb delay over here. And the next thing that I noticed that's in the track, kind of moving away from the overall vocals, is this kind of like swell sound. So if you listen to the back, that vocal that's building, that kind of thing. For that, what I did is I just found this little bit here. So definitely in their tune, they're kind of like throwing the vocal through like some kind of delay or something, like, and then exporting it out, duplicating it over something. They're using the actual vocal that they use in the track to create this sound, but I just found something that was similar and just chucked it in there. Kind of gets a similar effect. It's a little different, super simply. And then super like processing's pretty simple. Removing some of the lows, a little bit of sidechain so it's pumping. That's basically about it. So that's a look at the vocals. What I decided, I wanted to go through the vocals first because it felt like this kind of like really carrying the track, and I'm finding getting the vocals in sooner in your track is better than later, because or else it can be a really difficult process going through like all these different vocal bits, trying to find something that fits perfectly with what you've already arranged. It can be a lot nicer to have the vocal in earlier and then just build everything else around it, because it's such a fundamental core part, like a hook like that. That's why I went about getting these kind of vocal bits in first, and then I added in the piano bit. So let's have a listen to the first layer. And let's listen to the reference. Right? So mine sounds a little clearer. And the one in the reference sounds a little bit more almost like lo-fi, which is what I'm going to bring in on the second layer here. So first thing was, I just found this piano loop. And then cut it up so that it could do like those stab sounds. But it's important in this style, I would say, to find a piano sample that you can use the full drag out of that, because then it's going to come important in like the break, which I'll show you in a moment. But first we wanted to get kind of that chop. So found a cool sample in Splice and found something that had like a, if you can hear this, like a progression, right? Because that's going to come really, really important. Other than that, was just flicking back and forth between the reference, trying to get like the positions of it right, and then trying to get the volumes right. In terms of any processing, what we have going on here is just removing some of the lows, so it's not interfering with the kick or the bass at all, and then removing some of the highs to kind of try to nestle it in a little bit. Then a little bit of this one knob sidechain, make it pump, remove it from the kick and all that again. Saturation to fill up the sound a bit and to make it so that it a little bit like kind of gritty in texture is kind of nice from the saturation as well. And then an auto filter, which is more of an effect, it's like when it's swelling in slowly, basically. Then I pan this one to the left by 26. If you listen, I feel like you can hear that piano. It's a little bit more on the left side. And then I added in, duplicated over that element. And also think with the arrangement, it's like this cool little thing at the end. It'll kind of like build up there or something. So then what I did is I duplicated it over and added this additional element. So let's take a look and listen. Let's solo it out. So they kind of work together in a way to kind of get a little bit closer to that like lo-fi sound of it. Just like a different way to approach it. And I pan this one to the right, and then that way it's kind of filling it out the piano sound, making it so you can hear it on both ends a little bit, but it's mixing quite a bit lower. In terms of what's going on here, in terms of the processing for this other one, you can hear it's like pretty weird and like messed up. So what I have is this like this roared preset, which is doing quite a bit. Drums, I don't know, spectral probably or something. And then we're moving a bunch of the lows, similar EQ moves as the other one. But then I'm also running into this Brooklyn resonator, and that's kind of adding that like ringing sound. Hear it? Right there. And then what I've also done is I've mapped up this LFO to the dry wet so that it's slowly adding in that kind of ringing sound over time. It's like a subtle small thing, but it adds like some interesting character, I would say. Then for this one, we're using the transient shaper to increase the attack and bring down the sustain a little bit. What this is the free kilohertz transient shaper device, just mapped again like the core features. This way it's kind of making it cut out a little bit more, and it's making it tighter sounding by removing some of the sustain, then some sidechain and some drive, some saturation there. And that's a good look at that. Then in this area, on the back half of the tune, if you listen, there's like that piano. Right? I don't know if you can hear, but there's almost like a little like rave element, so I added in this. Let me bring up the volume. So what I did was just looked up some rave stabs on Splice, and then cut it up and made it so it's more or less kind of doing a little bit call and response a little bit. It's like mostly following that the piano hits, but some of them are a little extra basically, and then off the piano hit, so it's a little call and response, like echo kind of sounding vibe there. In terms of the processing, just removing some lows, a little bit of the sidechain and saturation. I pan this one to the right, so that way it's kind of bouncing off the main piano. You can mostly hear on the left side. Then I think last thing I want to show you is this in the structure. It's important to have, like I mentioned, how you have like the cut up piano, but you want to also have, in this style at least, you want to have it so you can do something like this. So let's have a listen. The piano's slowly filtering in. and then I added this extra vocal. And that's the kind of, in this one, the verse of the tune comes in here, just like disco-y song. And I just went about it a little different way, just creating a different vocal bit to play in just for this part. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good look at the synth and vocals on this one. Main thing is that it really is this, like, these vocal chops is kind of the main thing. Ideally, if you were recreating it like in a really good way, you'd be using vocal chops like this that you can cut up and then use whatever song you're chopping this up from to like be in like the breakdown part to like play us almost a verse, so you don't have to like find something separate. And then the main thing again is like really a lot about like reusing elements in that way. So like finding a cool chord progression so that you can use it in the break, and then also have it so that you're chopping it up in the main drop. That way there's like a through line of the same sounds being used throughout the whole song, but they're just being chopped up and arranged in different ways, basically, which is a cool way to make it so everything sounds, you know, cohesive, but also has changing elements throughout the track, which we'll get into a little bit more in the structure video. Yeah, I think that's a good look at this one. What we'll do next is do a rundown of the 80-20 rule when it comes to synths and vocals in house music production, so you can apply what you've been learning here to your actual own productions. Before we do that, I just want to quickly mention that this video is sponsored by our good friends over at Rocket Powered Sound. They actually hooked up the kick drum that we're hearing in this track, which is a pretty, I mean, having solid drum sounds is pretty important. So that's why I'm really excited that they hooked up they're sponsoring the video here. And also, if you would like, you can get 30% off of their Ultimate Sample Pack, which is a sample pack that includes over 1,000 really iconic and usable sounds. And the kick drum that we're listening to and that I use in this video is from that sample pack. Just visit the link that's on screen now or in the description, and make sure you use the code ULTIMATEBESTFRIENDS to get 30% off of that. And also, if you grab the project files for this one, you'll be able to get any of the Rocket Powered Sounds drums that they hooked up for the project files as well. So yeah, really grateful for them for hooking up our community like this. And with that said, let's jump into the 80-20 rule for this one. Hi, my friend, Matt from Best Friends Club here. And if you've been paying attention, then you've probably figured out what the 80-20 rule is when it comes to creating melodic elements like synths and vocals for your music. The goal here is to get 80% of the result with only 20% of the time, energy, or effort. And because the first key to the 80-20 rule when building out your melodic elements is to use a reference track, we are making sure that we're effortlessly hitting 80% of a very professional benchmark. In particular, we use that reference track to focus on playing in the right key, following a similar rhythm, and selecting the right sounds. This just keeps things fast and focused. The second key is to mix as you go in an extremely streamlined way by only focusing on the volume of our sounds compared to the reference track, as well as using a simple repeatable channel strip for each track that we add to our songs. The third and final key is that you don't want to reinvent the wheel each and every time, so you should start a practice of repurposing your old project files by adding old project files, racks, and groups to your collections area in Ableton. By creating a suite of powerful templates, Ableton racks, and one-knob effects that you've personalized and curated over time, you'll be able to get a higher quality result faster. If you'd like to get a head start by downloading all the racks, templates, and all the files that you've seen me use in the Ableton project file for this video, or if you'd just like to take a closer look at any of the techniques or tracks you saw me work on in this video at your own pace, you can find a link to this video's project files on screen now and at the second link that's in the YouTube description. I'm recreating a different song from the Beatport top charts every single week and making the project files available to anyone who wants them. You'll also get access to a private Discord where you can ask me and the community questions, as well as share tracks for feedback. If you or your music are not quite ready for a shot in the arm like that, I've also made you a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that have helped me figure out how to completely finish one new song each and every single week. And you can grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit by visiting the first link that's in the YouTube description here. However, if you just feel like staying on YouTube for now, that's totally fine. Save that link for later, and check out this playlist of videos where I remake other melodic elements like synths and vocals from other songs in the Beatport top charts. Or if you want to take what you've learned in this video to the next level, check out this video right here.